Hello class, welcome to our session today. And today we will be talking about the powers of Congress, which are located in Article 1 of the US Constitution. Please keep notes. One housekeeping observation here, that you should complete the quiz, which is available on Moodle under this week's session. So please take a note of that due date. I believe it is July the 19th at midnight when that's due, and make sure you take the quiz. Again, if you need to reach me, my email is dmonda01@manhattan.edu, and today we'll be speaking about the powers of Congress in Article 1. Now, first thing to remember is Congress is the most powerful arm of government. The other two arms are the executive, which is part of the presidency of the United States, whose powers are articulated in Article 2. And the third arm of government is the judiciary, which is the Supreme Court of the United States with the 9 Supreme Court justices. Congress and Congress's powers are articulated in Article 1 of our Constitution. The powers of the presidency or the executive are articulated in Article 2, and the powers of the judiciary are articulated in Article 3. Congress makes the law, the executive enforces the law, and the judiciary interprets the law. So thinking about powers of Congress, we know that Congress can make law, but there are also other things that Congress can do under the Constitution. Congress has express powers, and these include the powers to tax, the powers to borrow, the powers to regulate trade and commerce, and also the power to print and make coins, which is what we call coinage powers. Other express laws that Congress has are the powers for war making, foreign relations powers. So, for example, if United States President Trump signs a trade deal with China, the Senate, which is the upper house of Congress, would have to ratify that. Congress provides for naturalization powers, postal powers, weights and measures in terms of scales at grocery stores or at the pump stations for your gas. Powers over territories. Here we're thinking territories like Puerto Rico, like Guam, and also powers over federal districts. For example, Washington, D.C. is not a state, it's a federal district, which is run by Congress. So this will be very interesting to think about. Congress also has certain implied powers. Implied powers are not specifically written in the Constitution. They are implied. In other words, they are powers that are necessary and proper for the proper functioning of the government of the United States. And they are what's necessary and proper through the elastic clause, or what we call the necessary and proper clause. And these are powers that Congress needs in order to conduct its business. Implied powers are established. Examples of implied powers are the powers to establish the Federal Reserve, making tax evasion a crime, establishing federal aid programs, drafting in the Army, and setting minimum wages and maximum work hours. An interesting case precedent that is related to the powers of the Congress to tax and the powers of the federal government over the states in terms of express powers is the Supreme Court case of McCulloch v. Maryland. McCulloch v. Maryland of 1819. And in that case, we see the application of the supremacy clause and the implied element of the taxing powers of the Congress to regulate interstate commerce. So express versus implied powers. Express powers are listed in the Constitution, implied powers are not. Express powers include powers to tax, to borrow, bankruptcy, foreign relations powers, war powers. Implied powers are needed in order to have express powers. So you can't have express powers effectively executed unless you have the implied powers captioned to it. Congress's non-legislative powers. These powers are not having to do with making law, are powers in relation to constitutional amendments. You'd need 3/4 of Congress, or 75% of Congress, or 75% of the 535 representatives in Congress, which is the 435 members of the House and the 100 senators, to ratify an amendment or a change to the U.S. Constitution. You would also need 3/4 or 75% of the state legislatures to also ratify for a change of the U.S. Constitution. Non-legislative powers on the Electoral College, on powers of impeachment, and powers of investigation. So please take a note of the quiz again for this week, and in summation, some of the broad themes we've talked about today: the express powers of Congress, so specifically listed in the Constitution; the implied powers of Congress, which are not specifically written but are necessary and proper for the effective functioning of government. These are found in the elastic clause, or what we call the necessary and proper clause. And we have also talked of some of the non-legislative powers of Congress: powers of impeachment, powers of oversight, powers of investigation, powers related to the Electoral College. And then lastly, thinking about the powers of Congress in Article 1 of the Constitution. Congress directly represents the people, in the context that we directly elect our senators, we directly elect our members of Congress. We do not directly elect the president. The president is elected through the Electoral College, which is an indirect process. Congress is again directly elected by the people. We do not directly elect the judiciary. They are nominated by the president and appointed or confirmed by Congress. So Congress, in conclusion, is the most powerful arm of government, and its powers are identified in Article 1 of the Constitution. Congress's main function is the power to make law. Have a lovely day, and please stay safe and